Mafia boss met his ex 3 years later on Christmas Eve. His daughter said 3 words that made him freeze. The fluorescent lights of the St. Jude Community Shelter hummed a flat, buzzing note against the concrete walls. It was a sound I'd come to associate with safety, outside. The Brooklyn snow was falling thick and fast, a clean white blanket over the grime. But in here, it was damp and smelled of industrial soup and wet wool. My name is Elena. I am 27 years old. 3 years ago, I ceased to exist. I tugged a string of flimsy silver tinsel straight on the drooping branches of a donated pine tree. It was Christmas Eve, and my job as the volunteer coordinator was to make this gymnasium look less like a gymnasium and more like, well, anything else. Elena? Maria, one of the overnight staffers, called from the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. The stew is thin, but we've got enough bread to fill a hearse. You think it's enough? I turned, forcing a smile that felt tight on my cold skin. It's perfect, Maria. It's warm and it's free. That's enough. She nodded, her tired eyes crinkling. You're a good kid, Lena. I wasn't a kid. I was a mother. In the corner, bundled in a pink snowsuit even though we were indoors, my daughter was sitting on a plastic mat, stacking worn wooden blocks. Mia. She was 2 years old. Her hair was a wild mess of dark curls, and her eyes, when she looked up at me, were a deep, startling shade of gray-green. My eyes are brown. I walked over and knelt beside her, smoothing her hair. Having fun, Bambina? I whispered, catching the slip. I tried not to use the old words. Mia just pointed at her lopsided tower. Up, she said, her voice a serious murmur. Yes, up. I kissed her forehead. Her skin was warm. She was the only warm thing left in my world. This quiet life was a fortress I had built brick by painstaking brick, a tiny third-floor walk-up with rattling windows and a landlord who took cash, a job here, at the shelter that paid almost nothing but offered anonymity. We were ghosts, Mia and I. We had no history, no family, no contact with the man who was her father. He didn't even know she existed. That was the point. I had run from New York not just to save myself, but to save her. I had run from the penthouse apartments, the armored cars, the smell of gunpowder and expensive cologne. I had run from the man I loved, because that love was a death sentence. I checked my watch, 5:30. The doors would open at 6 for the community dinner. Families were already lining up outside, stamping their feet in the snow. Okay, my love, I murmured to Mia, scooping her up. She wrapped her small arms around my neck and buried her face in my scarf. Let's go check the donations one more time. I carried her to the back office, a small, cluttered room where donated toys were piled high. My breath hitched. Just for a second, Christmas. The last Christmas I had spent with him. It was different. It was diamonds at my throat and a private jet to someplace warm. It was lies whispered over champagne. I shook the memory away. It was poison, that life was over, that man was gone. Or so I had thought. Across the city, in a place that scraped the sky, Dante Moretti stood in front of a window that was not a window. It was a solid wall of glass, 20 feet high, looking down on the city that was his. Or rather, the city that was his again. He was 34 years old, and he felt like 1,000. 3 years. 3 years of hiding in the Sicilian mountains, in damp, cold stone villas, waiting. 3 years of listening to coded messages on burner phones, wondering which of his men would be the next to be found floating in the harbor. 3 years of healing. The assassination attempt had been sloppy, but effective. His own second-in-command, Marco, had rigged his car. Dante survived only because he had paused to take a call, standing just outside the vehicle when it erupted in fire and metal. The blast had thrown him 30 feet, shattering his left leg and embedding shrapnel in his back. Marco was dead now. Dante had seen to that himself. The week he returned to New York, he had cleaned house, as his father used to say. The organization was his, fully and finally, but the scars remained. He rubbed his left hand, a reflexive gesture. The skin was puckered and tight. A permanent reminder. His leg ached whenever the weather turned, a dull throb that kept time with his pulse. "Boss," a voice said from behind him. Dante didn't turn. He just watched the snow fall on the city. Paolo. Paolo, his new consigliere, though he avoided the old titles, stepped forward, holding a single manila envelope. "It came an hour ago. To the front desk, no name." Dante finally turned. Paolo was a good man, young, quiet, loyal. He hadn't been part of the old crew. "What is it?" "A tip," Paolo said, his face impassive. "I think you need to see it." Dante took the envelope. Inside was a single, grainy photograph, clearly taken with a long lens. It showed a woman, her hair pulled back, carrying a toddler on her hip. She was walking into a rundown building in Brooklyn. The air left Dante's lungs. He gripped the photo, his knuckles white, the world tilted. "Elena," he whispered. It was impossible. He had searched for her. After the bombing, after he knew Marco was a traitor, he had used every resource to find her. He assumed Marco had gotten to her first. He had mourned her. He had buried her in his mind, alongside every other decent thing he had ever touched. "We don't know if it's real," Paolo said gently. "It could be a trap. The timing is convenient. Christmas Eve. Someone wants you distracted, or they want you in the open." Dante didn't hear him. He was staring at the woman's face, the cheap coat, the exhaustion in her posture. It was her, but she looked broken. "Where?" His voice was a low growl. "St. Jude Community Shelter. Brooklyn? They're hosting a dinner tonight for the homeless." A shelter. Elena. The woman who wore silk and laughed at his darkest jokes. In a shelter. "It's a trap," Dante said, crushing the photo in his scarred hand. He wanted it to be a trap. It was cleaner than the alternative, that she had left him, that she had run from him and chosen this. "Probably," Paolo agreed, but I have to go." Dante's mind was already moving. He couldn't go as Dante Moretti. His return to the city was still a tremor in the underworld. The legitimate press hadn't caught on yet, but they were sniffing around. "The fundraiser, the one my mother's foundation is sponsoring, is that tonight?" Paolo nodded. "Yes. The mayor's office is expecting you. A quick photo op. Show the city the Moretti family is still about charity." "Change it," Dante commanded, walking to his desk. "Tell them I'm making a last-minute donation. Somewhere else. Someplace that needs it more." Paolo understood instantly. "The shelter in Brooklyn?" "Get the car. No security, just you. And find me a name. Someone unassuming. A Mr. Rossi, from the accounting department." Dante looked back at the window, the city lights blurring. "I'm going to be a philanthropist." The front doors of the shelter opened at 6 o'clock sharp. The gymnasium filled quickly. The warmth of human bodies fought back against the cold, and the smell of the soup and fresh bread made the room feel almost festive. I was stationed at the donation table near the front. Mia settled in a playpen behind me. Drowsy and quiet, I smiled at the families, checked their names off a list, and handed out toy vouchers for the children. My smile was an ache. My feet hurt. Around 7, a few local press members showed up. A city councilwoman was here, ladling soup for the cameras. It was all part of the game. Then, the air in the room changed. It wasn't a sound, it was a drop in pressure. The chatter near the doorway quieted. People instinctively moved aside. I looked up from my list, and I forgot how to breathe. He was standing in the doorway, older, harder. He wore a simple black wool coat, but it fit him in a way that screamed money. His hair was shorter. There was a faint, silver-white line cutting through his left eyebrow that hadn't been there before. Dante. My blood turned to ice. It was a physical sensation, a painful freeze that started in my chest and shot down my limbs. He was here. He wasn't dead. He was here. My first instinct was primal. I spun around, my body shielding the playpen. Mia, he can't see her. He can't know. "Elena, you okay?" Maria asked from beside me. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My throat clamped shut. I turned back, forcing my hands to stop shaking. I kept my head down, focusing on the donation list. Be invisible, be a ghost. He doesn't know you're here. He's here for the politician. He'll leave. I could feel him scanning the room. I knew that feeling. It was the way he used to look for me in a crowded restaurant, a possessive, heavy gaze that claimed everything it landed on. I risked a glance. He was speaking to the shelter director, a fake, charming smile plastered on his face. He looked tired and dangerous. The rumors I had heard, the whispers of betrayal and exile, they were true. He was a man who had walked through fire. And now he was 20 feet away from my daughter. Dante Moretti hated charity. He hated politicians. And he hated being touched by strangers. This gymnasium was his personal hell. Mr. Rossi, this is an incredible surprise. The director, a nervous man with a bad tie, was saying, this donation, it will keep our doors open through the winter. Just happy to help. Dante said. The name Rossi felt thick and false on his tongue. The press cameras flashed. He smiled. It felt like pulling glass across his skin. He had scanned the room 3 times. No Elena. The tip was a fake, a bad joke. He felt a sharp, bitter relief, immediately followed by a wave of crushing disappointment. He didn't know which one was worse. He had been a fool to come. If you'll just follow me, Mr. Rossi, the councilwoman would love a photo. Dante nodded, his eyes sweeping the room one last time. He was done. He was leaving. And then he saw her. She was standing behind a table piled with cheap blankets. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, severe ponytail. She was wearing a faded flannel shirt. She wasn't the woman he remembered. She was less and more. His heart stopped. It simply ceased to beat. Elena. She wasn't a ghost. She was real. She was alive. All the air in the room, all the sound, all the people, they vanished. There was only her. She looked up, and her eyes met his. He saw it. Not love, not longing. Pure, unadulterated terror. She immediately looked away, her body tensing, turning slightly, as if to shield something behind her. Dante started walking. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the director calling his false name. He just moved. The 3 years of pain, the exile, the betrayal, it all dissolved into one single, burning question. Why did you run from me? I saw him coming. Each step was a hammer blow against my ribs. I couldn't run. Where would I go? This was my life. I bent down, my movements jerky, and began organizing pamphlets on the table. Don't look at him. Don't speak to him. He's a stranger. He stopped, right in front of my table. I could smell him. That same scent, wool, expensive soap, and something metallic, something dangerous. Hello, Elena, he said. His voice, it was lower than I remembered, rougher, like gravel. I kept my head down. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thin and reedy. Do I know you? A low, humorless sound vibrated in his chest. Don't. I finally looked up. His eyes were the same, a dark, piercing blue that saw everything. The scar over his eye was new. His face was leaner, the angles sharper. You're not supposed to be here, I whispered, my hands trembling. Neither are you, he shot back. A shelter? This is what you left me for? The insult barely registered. All I could think about was the small, sleeping child 10 feet behind me. Please, Dante, go! Not until you talk to me, he said, his voice low and intense. 3 years. Elena, 3 years I thought you were dead. I thought he killed you. He stopped. His gaze had shifted. It moved from my face to something over my shoulder. His expression, it fractured. The anger, the confusion, it all shattered and reformed into something I had never seen on his face before. Shock. I knew, before I even turned, what he was seeing. Mia had woken up. She was standing in the playpen, her hands gripping the mesh siding. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the tall, dark man who was making her mommy scared. Dante took a half step back. He looked from the child to me and back to the child. His lips parted. He was doing the math. 3 years. a 2-year-old child. And then he looked at her eyes. I saw the exact moment he knew. It was as if he'd been shot. He went pale, his scarred hand clenching at his side. "Elena," he breathed, but it wasn't a name. It was an accusation, a prayer. Mia, curious and unafraid, pointed a chubby finger at him. I tried to stop it. "Mia, no, honey." But Dante was frozen. He was a statue of a man, staring at the daughter he never knew existed. Mia, seeing him staring, seeing the intensity, the sheer focus, did what any toddler would do. She got his attention. She slipped free of the playpen's unlocked gate, which I had forgotten to latch. She waddled on her unsteady legs, right past me. "Mia, come back," I hissed, reaching for her. But she was too quick. She walked right up to Dante Moretti. She stopped at his feet, tiny and bundled in pink, and looked way up. Dante looked down. He seemed incapable of movement. Mia reached out and tugged on the hem of his expensive wool coat. The gymnasium was loud, filled with carols and chatter, but I heard her words as if they were screamed. "Are you my daddy?" The question hung in the air. The cameras flashed, but they were far away. The councilwoman was laughing, but it was a distant sound. Dante froze. The question didn't just cut through him, it shattered him. He stared down at this impossible child, this miniature person with his mother's eyes, the eyes he saw in his own mirror every single day. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. It was the one attack he had never prepared for. The silence stretched for an eternity. I finally moved. The terror broke my paralysis. I lunged forward, scooping Mia into my arms. Her face crumpled, confused about why I was suddenly so angry. "She's just a baby," I said, my voice shaking violently. "She doesn't know. She says that to tall men." It was a stupid, clumsy lie. Dante's eyes lifted from where Mia had been. They were dark, hollowed-out pits of shock and a raw, rising fury. "Elena," he said, and his voice was unrecognizable. I turned and ran. I didn't care about the dinner, my job, the press. I pushed through the crowd, heading for the back exit, the one that led to the service alley. I heard him behind me. "Elena, stop!" I slammed the metal door open, and the cold air hit me like a slap. Snowflakes melted instantly on my hot face. Mia started to cry, startled by the cold and my panic. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Mommy's got you." I fumbled in my pocket for my keys, my fingers numb and useless. The alley door slammed open again. "Get away from us!" I screamed, spinning around, holding Mia tight against my chest. Dante stood there, his chest heaving. The snow was falling on his black coat. He looked like a creature of the night, a beautiful, broken monster. "He's mine," he said. "No, it wasn't a question. She is mine." "She's mine," I cried, tears of fear and rage finally breaking free. "She's mine. She has nothing to do with you. She has nothing to do with that world." He took a slow step forward. "When?" "Don't." "When? Elena," he roared, the sound echoing off the brick walls. I flinched. Mia buried her face in my neck, sobbing. The sound of her cry seemed to wound him more than any bullet. I left because I was pregnant," I finally confessed, the words torn from my throat. "I found out the day of the bombing. I knew they were coming for you. I knew what that life was, and I couldn't raise a child in it. I couldn't let her be a target." I was babbling, the truth pouring out after 3 years of silence. I ran to protect her, from you, from them, from all of it. Dante stared at me. The snow melted in his dark hair. He looked past me, at the dark, empty street, and then back. His face was a mask of grief. He had been betrayed by his second-in-command. He had been left for dead. But this was a different kind of wound. This was a betrayal of the soul. He took another step, close enough that I could see the flakes of snow clinging to his eyelashes. He looked at Mia's crying face, then at me. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, wounded, and utterly destroyed. "You should have told me." The snow was a curtain, thick and white, muffling the sounds of the city and the alley. There was only Mia's crying, thin and sharp against my chest, and the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears. Dante's words hung in the air, heavy and cold. "You should have told me." "Told you?" I spun back, my voice cracking with a hysteria I had held down for 3 years. "Told you what? That I was carrying your child? So Marco could put a bullet in my stomach instead of just your car? Or so I could wait for you in a penthouse, wondering which night you wouldn't come home? I would have protected you," he growled, the words ripped from his throat. "You couldn't even protect yourself," I screamed. The sound of my own voice shocked me, Mia wailed, burying her face in my coat. Dante flinched, as if I had physically struck him. The accusation landed, and it was true. His failure to protect himself was the reason I was alive. "She's cold," he said, his voice dropping, the anger evaporating, leaving something raw and hollow. He looked at Mia, and his expression was unreadable. "You're shaking. I'm walking you home." It wasn't a request. It was the same old Dante, the quiet command that was not to be defied. "No, we're fine. Go back to your photo op." "Stop it, Elena." He stepped forward and I stepped back, my foot slipping on a patch of ice. He didn't reach for me. He just waited. "I'm not leaving you here, and I am not leaving her." "Where do you live?" I saw the stubborn set of his jaw. I knew that look. He would stand in this alley until the sun came up. He would not be moved. And Mia was shivering. My protective fury was being eclipsed by the simple, animal need to get my daughter warm. "Fine," I bit out. "But you're not coming in. You walk us to the door. That's it." He just nodded, his eyes fixed on the top of Mia's head. I turned and walked out of the alley. I didn't look to see if he was following. I knew he was. I could feel his presence at my back, a heavy shadow that blotted out the streetlights. We walked through the snow-covered streets of Brooklyn. It was Christmas Eve. Through the frosted windows of apartments, I could see the blue and red lights of trees. Soft, muffled carols bled into the air. It felt like a cruel joke. The silence between us was a living thing, stretched thin and vibrating. There were 1,000 things to say, and none of them. Mia's crying subsided into a snuffing whimper. She was a heavy, warm weight in my arms. "How?" he finally asked, his voice low, matching his footsteps beside me. I didn't pretend to misunderstand. It was just after that weekend, the Hamptons. I missed my time. I took a test. When? The morning of the bombing. He stopped dead on the sidewalk. I kept walking. He caught up in 2 long strides, grabbing my arm, not hard, but firm. I stopped, refusing to look at him. "You knew," he whispered. "You found out you were pregnant, and you ran the same day." "Yes." You thought I would be a danger to you?" I finally looked at him. The snow was catching in his dark hair, the white flakes stark against the black. I knew he was... "Marco? I knew he was watching you. I knew he hated me. And when I heard the explosion on the news, when they said your car, I thought you were dead, Dante. For a week, the whole world thought you were dead." His grip tightened. "And when you found out I wasn't?" "It didn't matter," I said, my voice cold. "You were gone, exiled, dead. It was the same thing. You were out, and my baby was safe. I was going to keep it that way." We started walking again. My apartment was 3 blocks away. 3 blocks felt like 3 miles. "Where did you go?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "Away. Pennsylvania. I got a job at a diner. I worked until the night I went into labor. Then I went to Ohio. I cleaned motel rooms. I saved every dollar. I kept my head down." "By yourself," he stated. It wasn't a question. He was processing the reality of it. The man who could buy islands was picturing me. Pregnant, scrubbing toilets. "I wasn't by myself," I said, adjusting Mia in my arms. "I had her." You ran from the wrong man, Elena, he said, his voice rough. You should have come to me. Marco was the traitor, not me. To you, that's a detail, I shot back. To me, it's the whole story. Marco, your father's rivals, the commission, it's all just one big monster. I didn't want my daughter anywhere near it. He was silent for a long moment. We turned the corner onto my street. It was darker here, the streetlights buzzing, one of them broken. Marco's gone, he said quietly. Good for you. I came back 3 months ago. I found him, and I dealt with him. I dealt with all of them. The family it's different now. It's clean. There's no such thing as clean, Dante. Not in your world. It's just a different kind of dirt. We reached the front steps of my building, a rundown brownstone. The front door covered in graffiti. I trudged up the slush-covered steps, fumbling for my keys again, my fingers numb. You don't have to live like this, he said from behind me. I jammed the key in the lock. This is my life. It's safe. It's quiet. Now please, go. I pushed the door open. The smell of boiled cabbage and damp plaster hit me. No. I turned. What? I'm not leaving. He walked past me into the dim, narrow hallway, holding the door open. She's sleeping. Let me carry her. No, I recoiled, pulling Mia tighter. Elena, you're going to drop her. You're shaking. You live on the 3rd floor. Just let me help you, then I'll leave. I promise. I stared at him. He looked exhausted. The scar over his eye was red from the cold. This wasn't the man I remembered. He was something harder, but also something more brittle. Mia was so heavy, my arms were aching. I nodded. Once, my throat was too tight to speak. He gently, so gently, slipped his arms under Mia and lifted her from mine. His hands were huge, his scarred one brushing my coat. Mia didn't stir. She just nestled her face into the collar of his expensive wool coat, her small, wet breath fogging the fabric. Dante looked down at her face, really looked at her for the first time. Without the shock, his jaw tightened, and he had to close his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he looked at me. 3rd floor? I just nodded and led the way. The walk up the 3 flights of stairs was the longest of my life. My apartment was at the end of the hall. I unlocked the 2 deadbolts, one of them flimsy, the other one I'd installed myself, and pushed the door open. The room was cold. I could see my breath. I'd left the small, ancient television on. A cartoon mouse was hitting a cartoon cat with a hammer, the sound barely audible. Dante stepped inside. He took in the entire room in one glance. It wasn't hard. The entire apartment was one room, with a tiny kitchen alcove and a bathroom. My bed was in one corner, Mia's crib in the other. The sofa was a threadbare pullout. He saw the rattling radiator, clicking uselessly. He saw the single electric burner on the stove that I'd left on low, a desperate attempt at heat. He saw the pile of bills on the kitchen counter, marked in red. He saw the chipped mugs, the single pot, the bare bones life of a woman on the run. His face hardened into a mask of controlled fury. He was insulted, not by me, by the room, by the world for letting this happen. Where? He asked, his voice a low rasp. I pointed to my bed. The crib was too small for him to lean into. Just on the bed. She'll be fine. He walked over and laid Mia down on my quilt. He was so careful, as if she were made of spun glass. He unwrapped her scarf, his scarred fingers clumsy, and pulled off her little pink hat. Her dark curls sprang free. He just stood there staring at her. Dante, I whispered. He didn't turn. Her name is Mia. Yes. She's beautiful. You have to go. He finally turned to me. The room was silent except for the wind rattling the plastic I'd taped over the window. He was still wearing his coat. He looked huge in my tiny apartment, a wolf in a rabbit hutch. Take off your coat, Elena, he said. You're soaked. I'm fine. I want you to leave. He walked toward me. I backed up until I hit the kitchen counter. He didn't stop. He reached out, his hand moving slow, and he touched my hair. "You have snowflakes," he murmured. He brushed them from my hair, his thumb grazing my temple. My entire body seized, every nerve ending lit up. It was a feeling I had buried, a feeling I had mourned. My body remembered him. It remembered the safety, the heat, the possessive, gentle way his hands always found me. I hated myself for it. I leaned into his touch, just for a fraction of a second, before I flinched back. "Don't. I'm not doing anything." But he didn't move his hand. He cupped the side of my face, his palm a furnace against my frozen skin. "You're so cold." His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were filled with a deep, bottomless ache. He looked at my chapped lips, my tired eyes, the faint lines of stress around my mouth that hadn't been there 3 years ago. "You've suffered," he whispered, "and it was my fault." "It wasn't your fault. It was your life." "It's the same thing." He leaned in, and I thought he was going to kiss me. My heart hammered, my body swaying toward him, driven by a magnetism I had no power over. But he just rested his forehead against mine. I could feel the tension radiating from him, the rigid control. "All this time," he breathed, "I thought you were dead. I grieved you, Elena, and you were here. You were struggling with my child." The shame in his voice was so thick it was suffocating. This was my chance. The old Elena would have used that shame, but I was just tired. I put my hands on his chest, intending to push him away, but the moment my palms made contact, I stopped. His heart was beating, fast and heavy under my hands. He was real. "You can't be here," I whispered, but it had no force. "Where else would I be?" He took a half step back, his hands falling to my shoulders. "This isn't a life, and this is a holding cell. It's my life. It's safe." "It's not anymore. If that tip came to me, it could go to someone else. They know you're here, Elena. They know about her." The cold I felt had nothing to do with the broken heater. No one knows. Someone does. He looked around the room again, his eyes dark. "You're not safe here." "I was safe," I said, my voice rising, "until you walked back into my life. You brought this. You can't just come back and claim us." The words hung in the air. He processed them. He looked at Mia, sleeping on my bed, and then back at me. He nodded. A slow, agonizing movement. "You're right," he said. "I can't claim you. I have to earn you. I will." He took a step back toward the door. "But I am not letting my daughter sleep in the cold, and I am going to be in her life. That is not a request. You can hate me. You can fight me, but I will not be a ghost to her." He was at the door. "Lock this, and don't open it for anyone." "Dante." "I'll be back tomorrow," he said, and he was gone. I stood there, shaking, for a full minute before I ran to the door and slammed the deadbolts home. I leaned against the wood, my heart trying to escape my chest. He was back, and he knew. The fortress I had built for 3 years. He had torn it down in an hour. The next morning, I woke up stiff. I'd fallen asleep on the pull-out couch, afraid to move Mia. It was Christmas morning. The apartment was freezing. Mia woke up around 8. "Mommy, cold." "I know, baby." I dressed her in 2 layers of sweaters. There were no presents. I had a small, stuffed bear I'd saved from the shelter donations, which I gave her. She hugged it. My gift was that we were safe. Or we had been. At 10 o'clock, there was a knock. Not a normal knock. It was heavy, confident. My blood ran cold. I picked up Mia. "Who is it?" "It's me, Elena. Let me in." "Dante." I looked through the peephole. It was him. He was alone. But he wasn't empty-handed. I opened the door, just a crack. He was holding a large, white box. There were 2 giant paper grocery bags at his feet, and next to him, leaning against the wall, was a small, perfectly formed Christmas tree, wrapped in netting. "What is this?" I asked, my voice flat. "It's Christmas." He nudged the box with his foot. "This is a space heater, a good one. It won't set the building on fire. And this, He pointed to the bags. Is food real food? I stared at him. This was his way. Provision, power. I told you, you can't buy your way in. I'm not, he said, his voice patient but strained. I'm making sure my daughter is warm and fed on Christmas Day. Are you going to deny her that because you hate me? He was fighting dirty, and he was right. I opened the door. He walked in, carrying everything. He set the bags on the counter. He took the heater out of the box, found the outlet, and plugged it in. A quiet hum started, and within seconds, a wave of blessed, silent heat poured into the room. Mia, who had been hiding behind my legs, crept forward, holding her hands out to the warm air. Dante watched her. His face was soft. "Hi, Mia," he said, his voice low. Mia just stared at him. He turned his attention to the tree, unwrapping the netting. "I brought lights, too." "You don't have to do this." "Yes," he said, not looking at me. "I do. I have 3 years of this to make up for." He spent the next hour setting up the small tree in the corner. I unpacked the groceries. It was an avalanche: fresh milk, eggs, real butter, a roast, vegetables I hadn't been able to afford in months, a bag of good coffee, a box of pastries, and, at the bottom of one bag, a small, wrapped gift. I put it on the counter, my hands shaking. I made coffee. He finished with the tree. Mia was mesmerized by the lights. I handed him a mug, our fingers brushed. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. "Thank you," I said, "for the heat, for the food." He nodded, sipping the coffee. "She looks like my mother." I sat on the sofa. He sat in the only other chair, a rickety wooden one from the kitchen. We watched Mia play. A fragile, bizarre peace settled over the room. It was warm. It smelled like pine and coffee. It was the most dangerous morning of my life. He stayed all day. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just existed. He told Mia stories about growing up in Italy, stories I'd never heard. He made her laugh. I watched him, this man who ran a criminal empire, get on his knees on my worn linoleum floor to show my daughter how to stack blocks. I cooked the roast. He helped. We moved around each other in the tiny kitchen, a phantom rhythm of a life we never had. We ate dinner at my tiny, wobbly table. It was the best meal I'd had in 3 years. After dinner, Mia was exhausted. I put her to bed in her crib. She was asleep instantly. When I came back out, Dante was standing by the window, looking out at the falling snow, lit by the lights of our little tree. The room was quiet. "I should go," he said. "Why did you really come back, Dante? To the city?" He turned. "To find you." "Don't lie to me." He sighed, rubbing the scar on his hand. "I came back to take what was mine, to rebuild, to stop the rot. What Marco did, it woke me up. My father's world. It was all about honor and respect, but it was built on poison. I was poisoned by it, too. When I was in Sicily, healing, I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted. I wanted peace, my own kind of peace." "And what about me?" I whispered. He walked toward me, stopping just inches away. You were the peace that was never part of the plan. You were the thing I wanted that wasn't about power. And when I lost you, I broke, coming back, finding you, and finding her." He looked down, his composure cracking. "You don't know what it's like, Elena. To be me, to have this in my blood, and then to see her. She's the only clean thing, the only good thing I've ever had a part in creating." He looked at me, his eyes raw. "What if you had told me? What if you hadn't run?" "We would be dead," I said, "or you would be, or she would be." "No," he said, his voice fierce. "I would have burned the city to the ground to keep you safe." That's what I was afraid of. The space between us was electric. The unsaid words, the shared memories, the 3 years of cold and loneliness. It was all there. He leaned in, slowly, giving me every chance to run. His eyes searched mine, asking a question I was too terrified to answer. My heart was a fist in my throat. I should have told him to leave. I should have thrown him out. I didn't move. His mouth touched mine. It was hesitant. It was slow. It was just the barest pressure, a question. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of grief. It tasted of salt and regret. I let out a shaky breath, and my lips parted. My hand came up, not to push him away, but to rest on his jaw. The roughness of his stubble was so familiar it ached. That's all it took. The hesitation vanished. He groaned, a low, broken sound, and his other hand came up, burying itself in my hair, tilting my head back. The kiss wasn't slow anymore. It was deep. It was desperate. It was 3 years of loss and loneliness and fear, pouring into one moment. It wasn't a choice. It was gravity. I clung to him, my fingers digging into his shoulders, his arms wrapped around my waist, lifting me off my feet, pulling me against him until there was no space, no cold, no fear, just him. The heat from the heater, the smell of pine, it all faded. There was only the heat of his mouth, the solid living proof of his body against mine. He backed me against the wall, his lips leaving mine to trail down my jaw, to the pulse hammering in my throat. "Dante," I gasped, my mind screaming no while my body screamed yes. "I'm here," he whispered against my skin. "Elena, I'm here." He kissed me again, and it was a surrender. We sank onto the worn sofa, a tangle of limbs and coats and 3 years of unsaid words. It wasn't gentle. It was a raw, aching need. His hands were everywhere, in my hair, on my back, tracing the shape of my face as if he was afraid I'd disappear. I met his desperation with my own, my hands mapping the new, hard lines of his body, the scar on his hand, the proof that he had suffered, too. This wasn't a reunion. It was a collision. It was the deep, emotional, and painful acknowledgement that no matter how hard I had run, I had never, ever escaped him. And tonight, in the warmth of the lights from our daughter's first Christmas tree, I didn't want to... The world came back into focus slowly. The first thing I registered was the sound, a quiet, steady hum. It was the space heater. The second thing was the warmth. It was a deep, penetrating warmth that I hadn't felt in years, a heat that wasn't just on my skin but inside my bones. The third thing was the weight. A heavy arm was draped over my waist, and my back was pressed against a solid, living furnace. Dante. The memories of the night before rushed in. The desperation, the taste of his mouth, the impossible, undeniable rightness of his body against mine. We had fallen asleep on the pull-out sofa, tangled together, the small Christmas tree a silent, glittering witness. I turned my head. He was asleep. His face, in the gray light of dawn, was stripped of its hardness. The scar over his eye was a faint, silver line. His mouth was soft. He looked peaceful. And in that peace, he looked so much like Mia it stole my breath. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the warmth. "Mia." I slid out from under his arm. The movement was slow, agonizing. I held my breath, but he didn't stir. The cold air of the apartment hit my bare legs. I found my sweater and pulled it on, my hands shaking. I looked at the crib. Mia was still asleep, her small back rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She hadn't seen. She didn't know. I turned back to the sofa, to him. What had I done? I had invited the monster in, not just into my apartment, but into my bed. I had given him my body, and in doing so, I had given him power. He stirred, his eyes opening. He didn't look confused. He looked certain. He looked at me, and a slow, possessive smile touched his lips. "Elena," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. "Get dressed," I said. My voice was a cold, sharp blade. The smile faded. He sat up, the blanket pooling around his waist. His chest was bare, marked with the faint, puckered lines of old scars I hadn't seen in the dark. "Elena, last night was a mistake," I said, cutting him off. I crossed my arms, a pathetic shield. It was... It was the cold. It was Christmas. It was a long time ago. It wasn't real. He stood up, and he was unashamed, his body powerful and lean in the dim light. He found his shirt, pulling it on. "You're lying." "I'm not." I walked to the window, staring out at the alley, anything but look at him. "I'm not that person anymore. Dante, I can't be. I'm a mother. My only job is to protect her." "And you think I'm not?" he said, his voice low, vibrating with a new anger. "I think you are the danger," I whispered. "I think you walk into a room and death follows you. Last night, it was weakness. It was a memory. It can't happen again." He was dressed now, and he walked up behind me. I didn't turn, but I could feel the heat radiating from his back. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice quiet, final. You can't just put me back in the box, Elena. I'm not a memory. I'm her father." "She doesn't need a father. She needs to be safe." I turned to face him. "I'm not ready to trust you, Dante. I'm not ready to trust this. Last night was one night. It was goodbye, not hello. You have to understand that." He stared at me for a long, hard minute. His jaw was tight. I saw the hurt in his eyes, but it was quickly masked by something else, something harder. Just then, his phone, which was on the kitchen counter, vibrated, a short, sharp buzz. I watched him walk over and pick it up. I watched him read the message. And I watched the man I had slept with vanish. The change was instantaneous. His shoulders tensed. His eyes, which had been soft with sleep and memory, became flat and cold. The capo was back. He typed a fast, short reply. He looked up at me, and his gaze was different. It was distant, assessing. "What?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said, his voice too smooth. "Business." He walked to me. He put his hands on my face, and his kiss was nothing like the night before. It was hard, fast, and possessive. It was a brand. "I'll be back," he said against my lips. "Dante..." Locked the door. He was gone. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the heater and the sound of my own frantic pulse. I leaned against the door, my resolve crumbling. "It can't happen again," I whispered to the empty room, but I knew I was lying. He didn't come back that day, or the next. A new, terrible routine began. The days after Christmas bled into a gray, frozen week. I tried to force our lives back into their old shape. I told myself his absence was a relief. It was a lie. The apartment was warm. The fridge was full. But the quiet was an enemy. I took Mia to the park. I went to the shelter to help organize the post-holiday donations. I tried to pretend that we were still the same two ghosts, unnoticed and safe, but I knew we weren't. The first time I saw him, I thought I was imagining it. We were at the park, Mia bundled in her snowsuit, trying to build a snowman out of the old, crusty snow. I was sitting on a frozen bench, nursing a lukewarm coffee. Across the playground, maybe 200 yards away, a man was standing near a black Lincoln. He was just watching. He wasn't on a phone. He wasn't reading. He was watching us. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed Mia. "Time to go, baby." I walked home, my pace quickening with every step. I took the long way, weaving through streets I never used. The black car did not follow. I told myself it was a coincidence. 2 days later, I went to the bodega on the corner to buy milk. The man behind the counter, Mr. Hassan, was a familiar, friendly face, but there was a new man in the store, and he was in the back aisle, reading the label on a can of soup. He was built like a refrigerator, wearing a dark green coat and a beanie. He didn't look like he belonged in this neighborhood. I paid for my milk, my hands trembling. When I left, I paused on the corner, pretending to check my phone. A minute later, the man in the green coat came out. He didn't look at me. He just crossed the street and stood on the opposite corner, waiting. Just waiting. It wasn't a coincidence. This was Dante. This was his answer to my goodbye. He hadn't left. He had just become invisible. He had put a leash on me. Rage, hot and blinding, choked me. He didn't trust me. He thought I was a flight risk. He thought he could manage me, handle me, wrap me in his suffocating, invisible protection. I stormed back to the apartment, my mind racing. How could I confront him? He hadn't been back. He wasn't answering the number I had from 3 years ago. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, there was a knock. Not his heavy, confident knock, a lighter one. I looked it through the peephole. It was one of his men, a young one I didn't recognize, Paolo. I opened the door, my body rigid. "Miss Elena," he said, his voice polite. He was holding 2 more bags of groceries. "Mr. Moretti sent these." "Take them back," I said. Paolo looked confused. "Ma'am?" "Take them back and tell him. Tell him I want to see him. Now." He's in a meeting." "I don't care if he's meeting with the Pope. Tell him to call off his dogs, or I swear to God, I'm taking Mia, and we're disappearing again. And this time, he will never find us." The young man's face went pale. He knew I meant it. He nodded. "Once. I'll deliver the message." He didn't leave the groceries. 2 hours later, Dante came. He didn't knock. I just heard the deadbolt slide open. He had a key. The arrogance of it made me shake. He walked in, his black coat dusted with fresh snow. He looked tired. He looked dangerous. "You should not have threatened me, Elena," he said, his voice quiet. "And you shouldn't have put a tail on me," I screamed. "I didn't care if Mia woke up. The man in the park, the man at the bodega. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I didn't live in your world long enough to know what your protection looks like? I am not one of your possessions." He stood there, just inside the door, and let me yell. He took off his gloves, finger by finger. When I was done, panting with rage, he finally spoke. "They're not my men." The words were so quiet, I almost missed them. "What?" "The man in the park, the man at the bodega." He looked at me, his eyes dark and empty of all warmth. "They're not mine. My men are in the car across the street, and in the apartment on the 4th floor. They're watching them." The air left my lungs. The room started to spin. "No, you're lying." "I'm not." "You were right to be scared, Elena. You were just scared of the wrong people." He walked further into the room. That text message, the one I got the morning after Christmas. It was from Paolo, the tip that led me to the shelter. It didn't come from a friend. It was anonymous, sent from a burner. "Someone wanted me to find you. Someone has been watching you for a while. They were just waiting for me to take the bait." I sank onto the sofa. "Who?" "I don't know yet," he said, his voice a low growl. "An old enemy. Someone my father crossed, someone Marco was in business with. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they know. They know you're alive. And now they know about Mia." He knelt in front of me, taking my shaking hands in his. His were warm. "Those men, Elena, they aren't here to protect you. They are here to watch you. They are using you. They are using my daughter as leverage against me." This was it, my worst nightmare, the one I had run from for 3 years. It hadn't been Marco. It was just the life. It was a hydra. "You cut off one head and 2 more grow in its place." "And you," I whispered, the rage returning. But this time it was cold, laced with terror. "You brought this. You came here. You confirmed it for them. We were safe. We were ghosts. We were nothing. And you couldn't leave us alone. You just had to find my daughter," he finished, his voice rising. "To find the woman I thought was dead. This is not my fault, Elena. This is the fault of the animals who are targeting a woman and a child." "It's the same thing." I ripped my hands from his. "Your world, their world. It's all the same to me. You brought this war to my door, to her door." I stood up, backing away from him. "Get out! Elena, listen to me. You're not safe here. You have to come with me. I have a place." "No, I'm not going with you. I'm not hiding in one of your gilded cages. I am done. Get out." "I'm not leaving you unprotected," he roared. Your protection is a death sentence. It's a spotlight. It's the reason those men are out there right now. Get out. I was sobbing now, a dry, hiccuping, terrified sound. Get out, Dante. Take your men. Take your blood money and go. I don't want your help. I just want my life back. Life. He stared at me. His face was a mask of cold fury. I had never seen him this angry. Not at me. I can't leave you, he said, his voice breaking. You can, I whispered. You have to. It's the only way. Please, just go. Pretend you never found us. He knew I meant it. He knew in this moment. I hated him. I hated him for being alive. I hated him for finding me. I hated him for making me love him, even for one night. He turned. He walked to the door. He didn't look back. I am not leaving this city, Elena. He said, his hand on the knob, and my men are not leaving this street, whether you see them or not. He left. I ran to the door, slamming the deadbolts. I slumped against the wood, my legs giving out. I was alone, truly, finally alone. And I was terrified. That night, the world ended. I didn't sleep. I sat on the sofa, watching the street. I saw Dante's men. A gray van parked 2 blocks down. I saw the other men, too. The man in the green coat, back on his corner, drinking a coffee, a silent, deadly standoff. Mia was restless. She wouldn't sleep. She kept waking up, crying. Mommy, scary, she whimpered, clinging to my neck. It's okay, baby, I kept saying, my voice a hollow lie. Mommy's here. It's just a bad dream. She was feeding on my fear. It was pouring off me, a toxic, cold fog. She could feel it, the very thing I had run to prevent. I was doing it to her. I was poisoning her with my terror. Around 3 a.m, my phone rang. It was Maria, from the shelter. Her voice was frantic. Elena? Oh God, Elena, you have to come down here. Someone broke in. It's bad. My heart stopped. Did they take anything? Is anyone hurt? No, they just... You just need to see it. I found my neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, a kind old woman on the 2nd floor. I woke her up, my hands shaking. I pressed a $20 bill into her hand. Please, just for an hour. She's asleep. Please. She saw the look in my eyes and just nodded, pulling on her robe. I ran the 6 blocks to the shelter. The snow had started again, a blinding, wet curtain. I saw a police car parked outside, its lights painting the street in silent blue and red strokes. Maria met me at the door, her face white. In the back, the storage room. I walked through the dark, quiet gymnasium. The Christmas tree was still up, its lights off. It looked pathetic. I pushed open the door to the storage room. The police were there, taking photos, but I didn't need to see the details. I saw the wall. It was graffiti, spray-painted in huge, dripping red letters. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. We know about the girl. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. A strange, dead calm settled over me. It was real. It wasn't a threat against Dante. It was a threat against me. They knew. They had been watching me. They had vandalized my shelter. They were targeting me. And I had just sent the only man who could stop them away. I stumbled out of the shelter. I didn't talk to the police. I just walked, numb, into the snow. I made it back to my building. My legs were heavy, like I was moving through water. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs. The hallway was dark. The apartment it wasn't safe. It was a box. It was a trap. I couldn't go in. I couldn't breathe. I sank down onto the cold concrete steps of the stairwell, right outside my door. I put my head in my hands, and for the first time, I broke. I cried. I cried for my daughter. I cried for the 3 years of peace I had stolen. I cried for the fact that I had run so far, only to end up right back where I started, trapped, hunted, and at the mercy of monsters. I was shaking with an anxiety so deep it felt like my bones were vibrating. The heavy metal door from the 2nd floor landing opened. I didn't look up. It was Mrs. Petrov. But the footsteps were too heavy. They were slow, steady. They stopped. One step below me. I looked up. It was Dante. He was here. He hadn't been in his car. He had been somewhere, watching. He knew. He didn't say, "I told you so." And he didn't say anything. His face was carved from stone. He just sat down on the step next to me. I didn't have the energy to fight him. I didn't have the energy to speak. I fell apart. I leaned sideways and collapsed against him, my face burying in his cold, snow-damp coat. I sobbed, my hands gripping the front of his jacket. "They know," I wept. "Dante, they know. The shelter, and the girl. They know." He didn't pat my back. He didn't shush me. His arms came around me, pulling me onto his lap, holding me against his chest like I was a child. He just held me. He held me while I shattered. He waited until the sobs quieted into ragged, hitching breaths. "I know," he said. His voice was a low, terrifying rumble in his chest. "Paolo told me." I pulled back, just enough to look at him. My face was a mess. What am I going to do? Oh, God, Dante, what did we do? He took my face in his hands, his grip firm, forcing me to meet his eyes. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were dead. They were the eyes of the man who had survived an assassination, the man who had cleaned house. "You," he said, his voice fierce, "are going to do nothing. You're going to stand up. You're going to get your daughter. You're going to pack one bag, and you are coming with me, right now." "No, I can't be in your world." "You're already in it," he said, his voice like a crack of thunder in the small stairwell. "It's too late for that. You're in it. She's in it. The only choice now is how we fight." He stood up, pulling me with him. I was shaking, weak. "Listen to me, Elena." He held me by the shoulders, his gaze pinning me to the wall. "I will burn this city down before I let anyone touch either of you. Do you understand me? This ends. Now." I stared at him. The man I had run from. The monster. The father of my child. He was the only person in the world who could save us. I didn't want to believe him. I didn't want to trust this world. I didn't want this to be my life. But a part of me, the part that had collapsed in his arms, the part that knew the steel in his voice, that part did. I nodded once, a tiny, broken movement. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I didn't go back to sleep. After Dante left the stairwell, I went inside and packed one small duffel bag. I put in 3 outfits for Mia, her stuffed bear, her toothbrush, for myself. I packed a pair of jeans, a sweater, and the small tin box where I kept the $300 I had saved for an emergency. This was the emergency. I changed Mia's diaper, my hands moving with a numb, mechanical efficiency. She was still half asleep, her small face warm and flushed. I dressed her in her warmest snowsuit. Dante was back in 10 minutes, just as the first gray, watery light of dawn was breaking. He didn't knock. He used the key. "It's time," he said. I picked up Mia. I grabbed the bag. I didn't look back at the little apartment. I didn't look at the Christmas tree, the new heater, the full refrigerator. It was all just a mirage. "Mrs. Petrov," I said, my throat tight. "I have to tell her." "Paolo is taking care of it," he said, holding the door open. "He's giving her 3 months' rent for her trouble, and he's having the locks on your door changed." I stopped. "Why? We're leaving." "So they know you're not coming back," he said, his voice flat. "So they know this apartment is empty, a dead end." I followed him down the stairs. The building was silent. The fear was a living thing in my throat, choking me. We stepped out onto the sidewalk. The snow had stopped. The air was razor sharp. A black armored Escalade was idling at the curb. It was the kind of car that was invisible in its wealth. But to me, it was a hearse. This was it. I was stepping back into his world. The fortress I had built was gone. "Wait," I said, my voice thin. Dante stopped, his hand on the car door. "Elena, we don't have time." I need things. For Mia, I didn't pack. I don't have enough diapers. I need formula. The food. I left all the food." My panic was rising, a clumsy, stupid, practical panic. I can't be your prisoner. Dante, I have to go to the store." He looked at me, his face hard in the blue light. I was resisting. Even now, after everything, I was fighting him. I was trying to hold on to one last piece of my old, independent life. He sighed, the sound a plume of white in the cold. "Fine. The bodega. Hassan's. 2 minutes. Paolo. You're with me." Paolo, who had been standing by the driver's door, nodded. Dante took the duffel bag from me. "We'll wait in the car. Go." I shook my head, clutching Mia tighter. No, you're not. I'm not letting her out of my sight, and I'm not getting in that car. Not yet." I was being difficult. I was being irrational. But the thought of getting into that dark, enclosed space, of surrendering completely, I couldn't do it. Dante's jaw clenched. He was fighting every instinct he had. His instinct was to throw me in the car and drive, but he was trying to be the man I wanted, not the man he was. "Fine," he ground out. "We'll all go, but we are walking. Paolo, stay with the car." He took my elbow, his grip like a steel clamp. We walked the half block to the corner bodega. My feet felt like lead. The man in the green coat, the one who had been watching, was gone. The street was empty, save for Dante's gray van parked 2 blocks down. The bell on the bodega door chimed. "Mister?" Hassan was behind the counter, sipping coffee and reading the paper. He looked up, his eyes widening in surprise when he saw me, and then his gaze shifted to Dante, and his friendly expression froze. He recognized what Dante was, even if he didn't know the name. "Elena, you're up early," he said, his voice wary. Just need some things. Hassan," I stammered. I grabbed a basket. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I went to the baby aisle. Diapers, wipes, 2 cans of formula. My hands were clumsy. I felt Dante's presence at my back, a silent, heavy guard. He was scanning the street through the front window, his body coiled. "Mommy, go!" Mia whimpered. She could feel it. The tension was so thick it was hard to breathe. "1 second, baby." I walked to the counter. I put the items down. Dante was standing by the door, his hand inside his coat. That's it," I said to Hassan. "Good," Dante said, his voice low. "Let's go." Hassan bagged the items. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet, but Dante's hand was already there, dropping 2 $100 bills on the counter. "Keep it," he said. "Sir, Hassan stammered. "Let's go, Elena." Dante grabbed the bag, took my elbow again, and pushed me out the door. The bell chimed. We were on the sidewalk. The Escalade was 50 feet away. It happened in less than a second. A man stepped out of the alley between the bodega and the next building. It was the man in the green coat. He wasn't watching anymore. His eyes were wide, wired, and fixed on Mia. He lunged. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a threat. It was an action. He shoved me, hard, knocking me off balance. "Give me the kid," he hissed. I screamed, falling back against the wall, but I held on to Mia. Dante moved. He was not the man who had cried at the sight of his daughter. He was not the man who had kissed me with hesitant grief. He was a predator. He didn't yell. He didn't pull his gun. He dropped the grocery bag and hit the man with a speed I couldn't follow. It was not a punch. It was a strike, with the heel of his palm to the man's throat. The man made a horrible gagging sound, his hands flying to his neck. He staggered, his eyes bulging with shock and pain. Dante didn't stop. He pivoted, grabbing the man's extended arm, and spun, using the man's own momentum to slam him face first into the brick wall of the bodega. The sound was a wet, sickening thud. The man in the green coat crumpled to the sidewalk, unconscious. I was screaming, just one long, high-pitched wail. Mia was screaming. Before the man had even settled on the concrete, Paolo was there, gun drawn, standing over the body. The Escalade's doors flew open. 2 other men I had never seen, were out, scanning the rooftops, their weapons low and ready. It had taken 3 seconds. 3 seconds for my world to end. Dante wasn't looking at the man. He wasn't looking at his soldiers. He was looking at me. His chest was heaving. His eyes were black with an adrenaline and a rage so pure it was terrifying. "Now," he said, his voice a low, lethal command. "We go. Now." He didn't wait for my answer. He took Mia from my limp arms. He grabbed me by the back of the neck, shoved my head down, and pushed me toward the open door of the Escalade. I fell inside. He threw the bag of diapers in after me and climbed in, shielding Mia's body with his own, as Paolo and the other men closed ranks. The doors slammed, the locks clicked, the truck accelerated, so fast it threw me back against the leather seat. I looked out the heavily tinted window. Paolo and another man were dragging the unconscious body from the green coat off the sidewalk, back into the alley. In 2 minutes, there would be no trace. I turned to Dante. He was holding Mia, his eyes closed, his face pale. He was murmuring something in Italian, his lips brushing the top of her head. He was shaking. I was numb. My resistance was gone. It had been beaten out of me on that sidewalk. The danger was not graffiti. It was not a threat. It was a man's hands, reaching for my daughter. "Take us," I whispered. "Take us away from here. Please, Dante, just take us away." He opened his eyes. He looked at me, and his expression was full of a terrible, cold grief. "I will," he said. "I am." The drive was silent. We left Brooklyn, crossed a bridge, and drove for what felt like an hour, ending up in a high-rise building that scraped the sky. It wasn't Manhattan. It was across the river, a fortress of glass and steel that looked back at the city. We didn't go through a lobby. The Escalade descended into a private underground garage. The doors closed behind us before we even got out. Dante's men were everywhere. They were in the garage, in the private elevator. We rode up 50 floors. My ears popped. The elevator doors opened directly into the apartment. It wasn't an apartment. It was a glass box, 2 stories, with windows that wrapped around the entire perimeter. The view of the Manhattan skyline was staggering. It was beautiful, and it was the most terrifying place I had ever been. "Where are we?" I whispered. "A friend's," Dante said, finally putting Mia down. She ran to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. "No one knows I use this place. The elevator is biometric. My men hold the garage and the roof. No one gets in or out." I walked to the window. 50 floors down, the world was moving. Cars, people. But up here, there was no sound, just the wind, whistling faintly. We were prisoners. The apartment was cold, not in temperature, but in style. All white marble, black leather and steel. It was sterile, untouched. "Paolo will bring your things," Dante said. He had his phone out. He was walking the perimeter, talking in low, angry Italian. The capo was back. I just picked up Mia. I found a bedroom, 1 of 5, and I sat on the king-sized bed, its white duvet impossibly soft. I held my daughter, and I watched the tiny, distant boats in the harbor. We stayed there, the next day, the day after. A fragile, bizarre routine began. Paolo brought us clothes, expensive, soft clothes that weren't mine. He brought food. He brought a box of toys that must have cost $1,000. Dante was a ghost for the first 24 hours. He was in a different room, on the phone, his voice a low, constant, angry hum. The war had started. But on the second day, he emerged. I was in the kitchen making toast. Mia was on the floor, stacking new, shiny wooden blocks. Dante walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept in a year. He had shed his suit coat and his tie. He was just in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing his scarred forearms. He didn't say anything. He just went to the $1,000 espresso machine, made himself a coffee, and leaned against the counter. We stood in silence, watching Mia. She likes the blocks," I said, my voice sounding strange in the huge, quiet room. "Good. Mia looked up. She saw him. She smiled, a wide, bright 2-year-old smile. "Daddy," she said, just a simple, happy statement. "Daddy, look." She pointed to her tower. I froze. My breath caught. Dante didn't freeze. Not this time. His face. It crumpled. The capo. The killer. He just broke. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't make a sound. He just put his coffee cup down, his hand shaking, and the tears ran, unchecked, down his face. He walked over to Mia and knelt on the marble floor. "Hey, Bambina," he whispered, his voice thick and broken. Mia, seeing his tears, looked concerned. She reached out her small, chubby hand and patted his rough cheek. "Daddy, sad." He let out a sound, a half laugh, half sob. He picked her up. He didn't just pick her up. He crushed her to his chest, burying his face in her dark curls. He held her, his broad shoulders shaking. "No, Mia Cara," he whispered into her hair. "Daddy's not sad. Daddy's happy." He held her for a long time. He just knelt on the floor, holding his daughter, and wept. I stood by the counter, my hand over my mouth, and I watched. I watched this broken, dangerous man melt, the part of my heart that I had kept locked and frozen for 3 years. It cracked. He was a monster. He was a killer. He was her father, and he loved her. My fear didn't go away. It just changed. It grew. Because now, watching them, I knew. I was not just afraid of the danger. I was afraid for them, for this fragile, impossible thing we were becoming. Later that night, Mia was asleep in her new, large, and terrifyingly safe room. I was in the living room, curled on a white sofa, watching the city lights. It was snowing again, the flakes drifting past the glass walls like silent, white ghosts. Dante came in, holding 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to me. "You shouldn't be afraid of me, Elena," he said quietly, sitting in a chair opposite me. "I'm not," I said. "I'm afraid for you, and for her. I'm afraid of what they will do to you, to get to her. And I'm afraid of what you will do to them." He looked into his glass. "My father. He became the head of the family when he was 22. His father was killed, shot in his own garden. My father found him, and that day, he changed. He became the man I knew. Hard, cold. He never held me. Not once. Not like I held Mia today." I watched him. He had never spoken about his childhood. "I was raised in this," he said, gesturing to the city lights. "In the blood. In the fear. I was lonely. I was always lonely. I was taught that love was a weakness, that caring for anything, it was a liability. It was a target." He looked at me, his eyes raw. "And then I met you, and you were not part of the plan, and I loved you, and I was weak, and Marco knew it." "And now Mia," I whispered. "And now Mia," he nodded. She is my one clean thing, Elena. She's the only part of me that isn't stained. And those animals, they want to use her. They want to stain her, to get to me." He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. "I'm so tired, Elena. I'm so tired of the blood." The silence in the room was heavy. There was only the sound of the wind. He was right. I had been so focused on my fear of him. I hadn't seen his... I stood up. I walked to him, and he didn't turn. He just kept staring at the city. I did something I thought I would never do again. I made a choice. I put my arms around his waist from behind. I pressed my cheek against his strong, broad back. I could feel the tension in his muscles, the rigid control. I held him. He let out a shaky breath. His hand came up and covered mine, where they were clasped at his stomach. "Don't run from me again," he whispered. "I'm not," I said. "I'm here." He turned in my arms. He looked down at me. The city lights were a halo around his dark hair. I rose on my toes and kissed him. It was not the desperate, grieving kiss of Christmas night. It was not the angry, possessive brand in my apartment. It was slow. It was tender. It was a promise. His arms came around me, pulling me close. His mouth was soft. It was a kiss of shared fear, of shared longing, of a trust that was terrifying and new. This time, I let him. I took his hand and led him to my room. And this time, when our bodies reconnected, it was not with the desperation of loss. It was with the tenderness of discovery. It was a quiet, desperate, and deeply emotional affirmation in the face of the war that was raging outside our glass walls. We were two people, clinging to each other, pretending, just for one night, that we were safe. We lay there for hours, wrapped around each other, watching the snow fall. "Is it possible?" I whispered into the darkness, my head on his chest. "Is what possible?" His voice was a low rumble. "A real life, for us, after this. Can it ever be normal?" He was silent for a long time. "I don't know," he said, his voice heavy with a truth I didn't want to hear. "But I am going to try." Just as I was drifting to sleep, his phone on the nightstand buzzed. I felt his whole body tense. The peace was shattered. He reached over and read the text. "What?" I whispered, already afraid. "What is it?" He sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The killer was back. "They found them," he said, his voice flat and cold. "Paolo tracked the man from the bodega. He tracked the tip that led me to you." "Who is it?" He stood up, walking to the window, a naked, dangerous silhouette against the glittering skyline. "The Falcone family," he said. "A rivalry that started before I was born. My father killed the old man's youngest son, 30 years ago, a debt of blood. They've been waiting. They knew I was in exile. They were watching you, waiting for me to come back. They were using you as bait." "Oh my God," I said, sitting up, clutching the sheet to my chest. "They are not just trying to leverage me, Elena. They are trying to do to me what my father did to them. They want my child." My heart stopped. The war wasn't just at our door. It was for our daughter. The old, familiar terror surged. "We have to run," I said, throwing the covers off. "Dante, we have to go. Now we can disappear. I did it before. We can go where they will never find us." "No." "What?" I stared at him. "Dante, they want our baby." "Running won't work." He spun on me, his voice a low, fierce roar. "Don't you understand? They found you when you were a ghost. They will find you if you're with me. They will never, ever stop hunting us." He walked to me, kneeling by the bed, his hands gripping my knees. "There is only one way out. It is not running. It is through. I have to end this. I have to end them." No, Dante. That's more killing. More blood." "Do you want our daughter to spend her life looking over her shoulder?" he demanded, his eyes burning into mine. "Do you want to live in a cold apartment, afraid of every man on the corner? Or do you want to be free?" He held my face. "Stay. Here. Trust me. Just trust me. Let me finish this. For all of us." The silence of the penthouse was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a vacuum, of a life suspended 50 floors above the world. For 2 days, we existed in this glass box, watching the city move below us, completely separate from it. Dante was a storm cloud trapped in the apartment with us. He was on the phone, a constant, low, angry murmur of Italian. He would pace the length of the floor-to-ceiling windows, a caged panther, and I watched the muscles in his jaw bunch and release. He was planning. He was mobilizing. He was at war. I tried to build a small, fragile bubble of normal for Mia. We sat on the white marble floor and stacked the expensive new blocks. I read her stories from books I had never seen before. We ate food I hadn't cooked, from containers Paolo brought up in the private elevator. But Mia knew. She was quiet. She had stopped asking to go outside. She just stuck close to me, her small hand always gripping my jeans. I was in the kitchen, pouring her a glass of milk, when Dante's personal phone, a different one, a thin, black device he kept separate, rang. He was across the room, staring at the skyline, He didn't move for a full second, and then he walked to the counter and answered it. "Speak," he said. I watched him. His face was stone. I saw him listen, his eyes narrowing. I saw the muscles in his neck tense. He didn't say anything, he just listened. Then he said, "How many?" A pause. "And ours?" Another, longer pause. I could see the pulse beating in his throat. "Lock it down," and he said, his voice a low, lethal hiss. No one goes in or out. Find the car, find the men. I want them, not their bodies. I want them." He ended the call. He didn't throw the phone. He placed it, very carefully, on the marble counter. "What?" I whispered. I was already shaking. "What was that?" He turned to me. His eyes were not the eyes of the man who had cried while holding his daughter. They were the eyes of the man who had slammed my attacker's face into a brick wall. "That was Paolo," he said, his voice flat. "The Falcones, they just sent a message." What message?" "They just hit the garage. Our garage. Downstairs." My blood went cold. "Downstairs? Here?" "A drive-by. 2 cars. They came in fast, right past the outer checkpoint, and they fired into the Escalade. The one we took from your apartment." I clutched the counter. The milk carton slipped from my hand. Oh my God, was anyone... "They're stupid, Mo," he growled, ignoring my question as he paced. "They're sloppy. They think I'm my father. They think I leave men exposed." He slammed his fist onto the counter. "The truck was empty. A decoy. My men were waiting for them." So no one was hurt," I breathed. "2 of my men are grazed. Theirs. They lost one, but the others got away." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his face a mask of cold fury. "It wasn't an attack. Elena, it was a message. It was a test. They were testing the security. They were telling me that they can get close, that they can get in." I looked at the window, the beautiful, stunning view of the city. We weren't in a fortress. We were in a target, a glass target, 50 stories in the air. "They're coming here," I whispered. "They can't get in this elevator," he said. "They can't get past the lobby." "But they shot at us. They shot at our car." The reality of it was sinking in. The what if? What if we had been in it? What if Mia? The old primal terror, the terror I had lived with for 3 years, the one that made me run, surged up and choked me. It was stronger than the love. It was stronger than the trust. It was an animal instinct. Run. Dante saw it in my face. "Elena, stop. I have this handled." "Handled?" My voice was a high, thin wail. "That doesn't sound handled. Dante, that sounds like the first shots of a war, and we are sitting in the crossfire with our daughter." "I am ending this," he said, grabbing my shoulders. "I told you." "You're not." I shoved him hard. He didn't budge. You're fighting. This isn't ending. This is just blood. I can't." I burst into tears. A sudden, violent storm of panic. Mia, hearing me, ran over and clung to my legs, her own face crumpling in fear. Dante looked at us, the 2 of us, crying, terrified. The capo dissolved. The father returned, his face full of agony. "I will fix this," he said, his voice raw. "I promise you, I will fix this." He spent the rest of the day on the phone. More men arrived. They were in the hallway outside the elevator. The apartment was no longer a home. It was a command center. That night, I put Mia to bed. I sang her a song, my voice trembling. I kissed her, and her small face was tight with a confusion and fear that was all my fault, all our fault. I went to my own room. I looked at Dante, who was standing by the window, on the phone again, his back to me. He was giving orders. Quiet, sharp, final. I couldn't do this. I couldn't be this woman, the one who waits, the one who sits in the gilded cage while the men outside bleed. I had run from this life once. I would do it again. I waited until 3 a.m. The apartment was dark. The only lights were the millions of city lights, glittering like cold diamonds. Dante was finally asleep, He was in his own room, down the hall. I had heard his door close an hour ago. I moved like a ghost. I grabbed the same small duffel bag Paolo had retrieved for me. I put in Mia's bear, the diapers, the formula. I put on my own coat, the cheap one I'd arrived in. I grabbed the $300 from my tin box. I went into Mia's room. She was asleep, her breath a soft, whistling sound. "I'm so sorry, baby," I whispered. I picked her up, wrapping her in a thick cashmere blanket. She stirred, murmuring, but didn't wake. I held her, my heart breaking. I was doing it again. I was taking her from her father. But he was not a father. He was a target, and we were the bullseye. I walked, barefoot, across the cold marble floor. I went to the elevator. The panel was dark, biometric. My thumb wouldn't work. I saw the small intercom panel next to it. For the guards downstairs, I'd press it. I'd tell them there was a fire. I'd tell them anything. I reached out my hand. "Don't." The voice came from the darkness behind me. I froze. Dante was standing by the entrance to the living room. He wasn't wearing a shirt. He was just in his pants, a dark, terrifying silhouette against the city lights. "Don't, Elena," he said again, his voice cracking. I turned, clutching Mia to my chest. "Let us go, Dante." "You were leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a judgment. "You were running again." "Look around," I hissed, my voice a low, desperate sob. "This isn't a life. This is a prison. They are shooting at us. I will not let my daughter die for your name. I won't let her be a message." "So you were going to run?" He walked toward me, his steps slow, deliberate. "Where, Elena? Back to a cold water flat, back to scrubbing toilets. Where did you think you could go that they wouldn't find you? They found you when you were nobody. How long do you think you'd last, now that you're my weakness?" "We were safe," I cried. "We were safe until you found us." "You were hiding," he roared, the sound echoing in the huge, empty room. "That's not a life. That's just waiting for the knock. You were waiting for me to find you, or for them to, and they found you first." He was in front of me now. His face was a mask of pain. He was hurt, not angry. He was deeply, profoundly hurt. You were taking my daughter. You were going to run. In the middle of the night, you were going to take her from me. I had to." "No," he said, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. He touched Mia's hair, his fingers gentle. "No, you didn't. You just don't trust me. After all this, you still don't trust me." I broke. The bag fell from my shoulder. My knees buckled. I sank to the floor, holding Mia, and I just sobbed. I sobbed for him, for me, for this impossible, broken life. I sobbed because he was right. I was running, and he was right. There was nowhere to go. "I'm scared." I wept into Mia's hair. "Dante, I am so scared. I can't be this person. I can't be a mob wife, waiting for a bullet. I don't know how." He knelt in front of me. He put his hands on my shoulders. He didn't pull me to him. He just held me. Steady. "You don't have to be," he said, his voice thick. You just have to be you. You just have to be Elena. You have to be Mia's mother. And you have to let me be her father." He waited until my sobs quieted. "I have a plan," he said, his voice low and intense. "A real one. I'm not just fighting. I'm finishing the Falcones. They're old world. They're all about blood and honor. They have one weakness, their own arrogance." I looked at him, my face a mess. What plan?" "They want me. They want to hurt me. The old man, Falcone, his enforcer, his youngest son's godson. His name is Silvio. He's the one running this. He's the one who gave the order to snatch Mia. He's the one who ordered the drive-by. Dante. I'm going to meet him." My blood ran cold. "What? No, that's a trap." "It's a trap I'm setting," he said, his eyes hard. "I'm leaking a rumor that I'm broken, that the attack scared me, that I'm willing to to make a deal, to pay, to give up territory in exchange for peace, in exchange for them leaving you and Mia alone. And he'll believe that? He'll believe it because he's arrogant, Dante said. He'll believe it because he thinks I've gone soft. He thinks you made me soft. He touched my cheek. He thinks love is a weakness. I'm going to show him it's a weapon. You're going to kill him. I'm going to end it, he said, his voice final, so that we can have a life, so that you never have to pack that bag again. He stood up, pulling me with him. 2 days. Elena, that's all I'm asking. Give me 2 days. Don't run. Don't hide. Just stay. Stay here, where I know you're safe. And let me finish this. For good. He took Mia from my arms. She stirred, her eyes opening. She looked at him, sleepy and confused. Daddy? I'm here, Bambina, he whispered, kissing her head. Go back to sleep. He carried her back to her room. I stood by the elevator, my empty duffel bag at my feet. I was trapped, but for the first time, it felt like a choice. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. Dante left. He kissed me, a hard, desperate kiss that tasted of fear and promises. And he left. Paolo is here, he said. Do not leave this apartment. Do not open the door. I will come back. I promise. And he was gone. The silence of the penthouse was different. It was a waiting silence, a heavy, suffocating blanket of dread. I couldn't just sit there. I couldn't just wait. I was not that woman. I picked up my phone. I went to the farthest bedroom, the one overlooking the river, and I locked the door. I dialed a number I hadn't dialed in 3 years. It rang 3 times. Sarah, I whispered. Elena! Oh my God, Elena, is that you? Her voice was a ghost from my old life, my life before Dante, my life as a paralegal in a downtown firm. Sarah, I don't have a lot of time, I said, my voice shaking. I'm in trouble, but I'm also not. I need help. I need legal advice. Elena, where are you? Everyone thought you just vanished. I know, I'm sorry. I can't explain. Not now. Listen, I have a daughter. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. A daughter? Yes, she's 2, and her father. He's back in my life, and it's complicated. Dante. It's Dante. A dead silence. Sarah knew Dante. She knew who he was. Oh, Elena, she finally whispered. Oh, honey, no. Yes, I said, my voice firm, but he's trying, Sarah, he's trying to protect us, but his world, it's dangerous. I need to know my options. Options, like a restraining order? No, I said. No, the opposite. I need to know about paternity and custody. If he legally acknowledges her, what does that mean? And if something happens to him, what happens to us? I was preparing. I was preparing for him to win, and I was preparing for him to die. Elena. Sarah's voice was heavy. This is big. This is Moretti family big. You need to file a petition to establish paternity. He'd have to consent and custody. If he's the legal father and he passes, his family could have a claim. My heart hammered. But if I'm the sole legal guardian, you are, right now, she said. You're her mother, and there's no father on the birth certificate. You are her everything legally. Are you sure you want to change that? I looked out the window at the cold, gray river. Yes, I whispered. I am. I want him to have rights. If we make it, and I want to be protected if we don't. Okay, Sarah said, her voice all business now. Okay, I'll draft the paperwork, a voluntary acknowledgement of paternity, a joint custody agreement with you as the primary residential parent. But Elena, you have to be so careful. I know, I said, just Just have it ready. I'll call you when I can." I hung up. I had done it. I had taken an action, my action, a piece of paper, a legal shield in a world of guns. It was pathetic, and it was the only thing I had. I waited. The day turned to night. Mia slept. I did not. I sat on the white sofa, in the dark, and I watched the elevator. 1 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock. My heart was a cold, hard stone in my chest. He was dead. He had walked into the trap, and he was dead. I was a widow, a single mother. Again, I would call Sarah. I would... Ding. The sound was soft, but it was like a cannon shot in the silent room. I stood up, my legs shaking. The elevator doors slid open. He was standing there, just standing. He wasn't in his suit. He was in a dark shirt and dark pants. He was alive. He stumbled forward, out of the elevator. He was not unmarked. "Dante," I breathed. His face was a mess. His left eye was swollen, already turning a deep, dark purple. His lip was split, a cut that was still bleeding. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, and I could see a dark, bloody graze beneath it. His right hand was wrapped in a crude, bloody bandage. He had been in a fight, a bad one. He looked at me. He looked at me, and his body sagged in relief. "You're here," he whispered. His voice was a raw, broken rasp. You stayed." I didn't walk, I ran. I flew across the marble floor and slammed into his chest. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my face burying in his throat. He smelled of metal and blood and the cold night air. "You're alive," I sobbed. "You're alive! You're alive!" He groaned, his arms coming around me, pulling me so tight I couldn't breathe. His bad hand fisted in my hair, holding my head against him. "I am," he whispered, his voice thick with pain and exhaustion. "I am. It's done." "Silvio?" He understands," Dante breathed. "He understands that there will be no mercy. He gave his word. The Falcones. They will back off. The debt. It's paid. They will never touch you. Or her." He was alive. He was hurt. He was here. And he had done it. He had walked into the fire, and he had come back. I pulled back, my hands framing his bruised, bloody face. I was crying, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of something else. Something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Relief. He looked at me, and I looked at him. The monster. The father, the survivor, my savior. I kissed his split lip, tasting his blood. "We're not running anymore," I whispered. He closed his eyes, his forehead resting against mine. "We're not running," he agreed. "We're home." I woke to the sound of silence. It was not the cold, hollow silence of my tiny apartment, heavy with the fear of being found. It was not the sterile, pressurized silence of the glass penthouse, humming with the tension of a siege. It was just quiet, the quiet of a world at peace. My body was warm, wrapped in sheets that smelled of him. I was on my side, and my hand was resting on his chest. I could feel the slow, steady beat of his heart under my palm. He was here. He was breathing. He was alive. I opened my eyes. Gray winter light was pouring into the room. Snow was falling outside the massive windows, thick and lazy, a curtain dropping on the war. It was over. I turned my head. Dante was asleep, lying on his back. In the daylight, he looked broken. The fight had taken its toll. His left eye was a swollen, grotesque shade of purple and black. His bottom lip was split. The blood dried and dark. His skin was pale, and the exhaustion was carved so deep into his features that he looked 10 years older. I lifted my hand from his chest and gently, so gently, traced the line of the bruise on his cheekbone. He was a monster. He was a killer. He was the man who had walked into the darkness and come back. For us. He had saved us. He stirred under my touch, his eyes opening. They were bloodshot, and for a second they were unfocused and wild, the look of a man still at war. Then he saw me. "Elena," he rasped. His voice was raw. "You're okay," I whispered. "You're here," he breathed, as if it was the only fact that mattered. He didn't move. He just looked at me, his gaze mapping my face. "You stayed." "I stayed," I confirmed. A small sound came from the doorway. We both turned. Mia was standing there, rubbing her eyes. She was in her small pajamas, her dark hair a tangled mess. She looked at me, then at the bruised, battered man in the bed. "Mommy?" "It's okay, baby," I said, sitting up, pulling the sheet with me. "Come here." She pattered over, her eyes wide, and climbed onto the bed. She looked at Dante. "Daddy, you're hurt." Dante just stared at her. He seemed incapable of processing the simple, domestic peace of the moment. He, Mia, and me in a bed, with the snow falling. "I'm okay, Bambina," he said, his voice thick. It's just a scratch." "It looks sore," she said, with the profound seriousness of a 2-year-old. Dante just nodded. He looked past her, at the window. The snow was blanketing the city, making the world clean. "It's morning," he said, as if realizing it for the first time. It's quiet." He looked back at me, a sudden, deep sadness in his eyes. "We miss Christmas." I felt my heart squeeze. We had the tree in my old apartment, the gifts I couldn't buy, the day of fear and desperation on the sofa. We had missed it all. I shook my head, my hand finding his, our fingers lacing together. "No, we didn't," I said. He looked at me, confused. "This is it, Dante," I smiled, my own eyes filling with tears. "This is our Christmas morning?" He understood. He squeezed my hand, a silent, painful acknowledgement. He sat up, hissing in pain as his bruised ribs protested. Then I have some presents." "Dante, no." "I've had them for a week," he said, cutting me off. "Paolo, he's had them." He reached for the intercom by the bed. "Paolo, bring them in." A few minutes later, Paolo, looking tired but clean, entered the room, his arms full of brightly wrapped packages. He set them at the foot of the bed, gave Dante a short, respectful nod, and vanished. "What is this?" I asked. Dante just smiled, his split lip cracking. "Open them, Mia!" Mia, who had been watching with wide eyes, crawled over the bed. The first box was huge. She tore at the paper. It was a dollhouse, but it wasn't a cheap plastic thing. It was a miniature 3-story mansion made of real wood, with tiny furniture and electric lights. Mia gasped, "A house." "A house," Dante agreed, his voice soft. "A safe house." The next gift was smaller. Books, 12 of them, classic children's stories. I looked at him, and he just shrugged. A father should read to his daughter. The last box was small, velvet. "This one," Dante said, his voice rough. "This one is special." Mia opened it. Inside, on a bed of silk, was a small, delicate gold chain. On it was a single charm, a tiny, solid gold bird, a sparrow. "It was my mother's," Dante whispered, his voice catching. Not from the family, from her family, before everything. She gave it to me, before she died. She said it would keep me safe." He took the necklace, his bandaged, battered hands trembling, and he fastened it around Mia's neck. Mia touched the small, warm charm. She looked at him, her gray-green eyes, his eyes, suddenly so old and wise. She didn't say thank you. She just launched herself at him, her small arms wrapping around his thick neck. "Daddy," she whispered, her face buried in his bruised skin. "Stay forever." That's what broke him. Dante went rigid. A sound tore from his throat, a sound of agony and relief. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her so tight she grunted. He buried his face in her hair, and his body was racked with silent, tearing sobs. He wasn't the capo. He wasn't the boss. He was just a man, holding the first good, clean thing he had ever had in his life. He was a father. I sat there, my hand over my mouth, and I watched him weep. I watched the monster I had run from, the man I had feared, break down in the arms of our daughter. And I knew in that moment that I had been wrong. Running wasn't safety. Hiding wasn't a life. This was this impossible, painful, beautiful, and terrifying this. He finally let her go, his face a wreck. He wiped his eyes on his sleeve, a clumsy, human gesture that broke my heart. I moved across the bed. I put my hand on his jaw, turning his face to mine, and he looked ashamed. "Dante," I said, my voice clear and steady. He met my gaze. "I want to try," I said. His breath hitched. "Try? A real relationship. You, me, her." I took a deep breath. This was it. The precipice. But with rules. My rules. He just nodded, his eyes desperate. "Anything." "No lies, I said. Ever. Not about the business. Not about anything. I am not a woman who will look the other way. I can't be." "Okay," he said, his voice raw. And no violence." His face tightened. "Elena, my world." "I know," I cut him off. "I know what you did to save us, and I will love you for it. Forever. But I can't. I can't have Mia grow up in that. I can't have her see that there has to be another way. If we're going to be a family, it has to be a real one, not that one." He was silent for a long time, searching my face. He was looking for an escape clause. I offered none. He finally nodded. Okay, I agree." He took my hand. It's what I've been working on since my exile. Since Marco, I knew that world was a cancer. It rots from the inside. I've been transitioning. Transitioning? "The Moretti family," he said. "It's an empire, but it doesn't have to be. The shipping, the real estate, the finance. It's a legitimate business. Or it can be the other parts, the parts my father loved. I've been selling them off, cutting them loose. That's what the war was really about. Not just the Falcones. It was the old guard, fighting to keep the poison." And you won?" "I won," he said, his voice heavy. It's done. I'm stepping down." I stared at him. Stepping down? From the active role, from the street. The council will run itself. I will be the head of the Moretti Corporation, a civilian. He tried the word, like it was a foreign language. A businessman, a father. "Can you do that?" I whispered. "Can they just let you go?" "They don't have a choice," and he said. And for a second, the old, cold steel was back. "I'm the only one who can make it legitimate, and I'm the only one who cleaned the house. They need me, but they will have me on my terms, on our terms." A few days later, the city was digging itself out from the snow. Dante's bruises had faded from black to a sick, greenish yellow. His lip was healing. I asked him to take me somewhere. We stood in the doorway of my old apartment. Paolo had been here. It was empty. The furniture was gone. The little tree was gone. The heater. It was just a cold, damp, empty box. It smelled of cabbage and mold. I walked to the window, the one I had taped plastic over. I looked down at the alley, the place I had hidden, the place I had been a ghost. "It's like it never happened," I whispered. "I'll have it burned," Dante said, his voice a low growl from behind me. The shame and anger were rolling off him. This was the place his child had lived. "No," I said. "Don't. It's just a room. It's not a prison anymore." I turned to him. He was standing in the middle of the room, looking so huge and out of place. He looked like he wanted to punch the walls. "I will buy you a house," he said, his voice tight. "Anywhere by the sea. You said you wanted to be near the sea, a place with a garden, a place that's clean, safe." I walked to him. I put my hands on his chest. "A house is just a box. Dante, I was a prisoner in this cold one. I was a prisoner in that glass one. I I don't want a house." He looked confused. Then, "What?" "I want a home," I said, rising up to kiss his rough jaw. "A home is not a place. It's this. It's you, and me, and Mia. I don't care where it is, as long as we're together, as long as we're safe." He put his arms around me, burying his face in my hair. I think I can do that," he murmured. On Sunday, we went to Mass. It was Dante's idea. I hadn't been inside a church in years. He probably hadn't either, but he said he needed to go. He needed to say thank you. We didn't go to the Grand Cathedral, the one his father used to own a pew in. We went to a small, quiet church in a neighborhood I didn't know. We sat in the back, in the very last row. I was wearing a simple dress. Dante was in a dark suit, but he looked like a man, not a boss. His bruises were hidden by concealer in his healing. He held Mia on his lap. She was quiet, her eyes wide, staring at the high, painted ceilings and the stained glass windows. The music started, the old, soaring organ. The smell of incense and old wax filled the air. I watched him. He held our daughter. His head was bowed, his eyes were closed. I didn't know if he was praying. I just knew he was present. He was atoning. Mia got fussy. She started to wiggle, and he didn't shush her. He kissed her head. He pointed to the window, showing her the colors. He was just a dad. And I sat next to them, my hand on his arm, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt whole. I felt safe. Not because of the guards, though I knew they were outside, but because of him. That night, we were back at the penthouse, but it wasn't a glass box anymore. It was ours. There were toys on the floor. There were my books on the shelf. There was a fire roaring in the huge marble fireplace. Mia was asleep. The snow was falling again, a silent, beautiful blanket. Dante was sitting on the thick rug in front of the fire, staring into the flames. I came over with 2 glasses of wine and sat down. I didn't sit next to him. I curled up in his lap, my back to his chest, leaning my head against his shoulder. He wrapped his arms around me, his chin resting on the top of my head. We just sat there, watching the fire. "It's quiet," I whispered. "It's quiet," he agreed. I took his right hand, the one he had hurt in the fight. The bandage was gone. The knuckles were raw, scabbed. I lifted his hand and kissed each knuckle. "Don't," he whispered. They're not." "They're yours," I said. I turned in his lap to face him. I traced the faint silver scar over his eyebrow. I touched the healing cut on his lip. I traced the old, puckered scar on his forearm. I was accepting him. All of him. The past, the present. "I love you," I whispered. It was the first time I had said it in 3 years. He closed his eyes, a pained, beautiful expression on his face. He leaned his forehead against mine. "You both saved me," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. I was a ghost. I was just my father's son. Just a name, an inheritance of blood. And you and Mia, you gave me a life." He kissed me. It was not a kiss of passion or of desperation. It was a kiss of profound, unbelievable gratitude. It was a kiss of peace. We just held each other by the fire, the city glittering at our backs. "Mommy, Daddy?" We turned. Mia was standing in the archway, dragging her stuffed bear. "Hey, Bambina," Dante said, holding out his arm. "Bad dream?" She shook her head. She just walked over to us. She looked at me, curled in Dante's lap. She looked at him, his arms around me. A slow smile spread across her face. She reached out, her small hands grabbing my hand and his hand. She pulled them together, clasping them in her own. She giggled. "Can we be a family now?" she asked. I looked at Dante. His eyes were shining. The the firelight dancing in them. He looked at me. I smiled, my tears falling. He nodded. "Yes, mia cara," he said, his voice breaking. "We can." He pulled us both closer, his 2 girls, his family, and the 3 of us sat there, together, in the warm glow of the fire, while the snow fell and the world outside was finally, beautifully, silent. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment and say hello. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for many more to come. We can't wait to read your thoughts in the comments below.